Chapter 3. The man who knows the Bellini workshop breathed with heat and hammering. Glass dust shimmered in the air like suspended frost. The great furnace roared in its stone throat, casting long, trembling shadows across the floor. And on a wooden easel near the back wall, half covered by a linen cloth, stood the mirror. Even concealed, it commanded the room. Matteo Bellini kept glancing toward it as he spoke with a merchant. Apprentices skirted around it with the careful avoidance one gives a sleeping animal. No one touched it unless they had to. The door opened. A man stepped inside, tall, composed, dressed in the understated richness of old nobility. He carried no entourage. He did not announce himself, he simply looked. His gaze moved past the furnace, past the tools, past the artisans, and settled on the half-covered mirror. "Forgive the intrusion," he said softly. His voice was cultured, but there was a tension beneath it, the tension of someone who has finally found something he has been searching for. Matteo approached. "Signor!" The nobleman didn't answer. He walked toward the mirror with the slow, deliberate steps of a man approaching an altar. "May I?" he asked, fingers hovering near the linen cloth. Matteo hesitated, then nodded. The nobleman lifted the cloth, light shifted. The mirror caught the glow of the furnace and deepened it, as though the glass held a second fire inside. The nobleman did not gasp. He did not smile. He simply exhaled a quiet, controlled breath, as if confirming a suspicion he had carried for years. "So," he murmured. "It's true," Matteo frowned. "You've heard of our work." "I've heard of this," the nobleman said, eyes never leaving the glass. "A mirror that sees too clearly, a mirror that remembers, a mirror that responds." Matteo's jaw tightened. Nobleman leaned closer, not to admire his reflection but to study the surface, the way a scholar studies a dangerous specimen. "Whose mirror is this?" he asked. Matteo answered without thinking. "It is for Signor Alessandro Viorli." Nobleman closed his eyes briefly, as if a puzzle piece had clicked into place. "Viorli," he said quietly. "Of course, he would buy brilliance without asking what it costs." Matteo stiffened. "You know him." "Enough to say this. He has no idea what he's taken into his home." Workshop fell silent. The nobleman straightened, composed himself, and said, "I would like to commission a mirror of my own." Matteo blinked. "Like this one?" "No," the nobleman said sharply. "Not like this one. I don't want its temperament, but made by the same hands." He reached into his coat and placed a purse of coins on the workbench, far too much, even for a mirror of this size. "This is a once-in-a-century craft," he said, "and I know exactly what I'm buying." He turned toward the door. "Send word when it is ready." Left without another glance. Only after the door closed did Matteo realize his palms were damp. The mirror, still half uncovered, seemed to watch him. Chapter 4. The mirror arrives. The Viorli estate stood several miles beyond the edge of the city, where the vineyards stretched across gentle hills, and the canals gave way to quiet country roads lined with cypress trees. The house itself was not ostentatious. Large, certainly, but built with a restrained elegance that suggested old wealth rather than newly acquired fortune. Pale stone walls reflected the afternoon sun, and tall windows overlooked gardens filled with roses and carefully tended hedges. Inside, the halls were wide and cool. Paintings hung in deliberate arrangement along the walls. Marble statues occupied quiet alcoves. Books filled several rooms in towering shelves that smelled faintly of leather and dust. Alessandro Viorli lived among these objects the way a scholar lives among ideas, thoughtfully, silently. The mirror arrived just before dusk. Servants moved with a strange, subdued caution, as though they sensed something in the air, a shift in pressure, a subtle wrongness. Even the horses seemed restless, stamping and tossing their heads as the Bellini cart rolled up the gravel path. Viorli stood at the top of the steps, hands clasped behind his back, watching the delivery with a mixture of curiosity and impatience. He had commissioned mirrors before: Venetian glass, Florentine frames, even a French piece rumored to flatter the viewer, but none had stirred anticipation like this one. He didn't know why. Two Bellini men lifted the mirror from the cart, wrapped in linen and tied with cord. Even covered, it seemed to draw the eye. The servants carrying it avoided looking directly at it, focusing instead on their footing. "Careful," Viorli said, though his voice was softer than usual. "Bring it to the east room." The men obeyed, moving through the corridor with the slow, reverent steps of pallbearers. The house seemed to darken as they passed, as though the mirror absorbed light rather than reflected it. When they reached the east room, Viorli dismissed everyone. "I'll unwrap it myself." Door closed, silence settled. He approached the mirror and untied the cord. The linen fell away, light shifted. The mirror caught the last of the afternoon sun and deepened it, turning the pale gold into something richer, almost molten. Virely felt a faint pressure behind his eyes, not pain, but awareness, as though the mirror were looking back. He stepped closer. His reflection appeared crisp, almost too crisp, as if the glass were not reflecting him but studying him. He leaned in. The reflection sharpened with impossible precision. Every thread of his coat, every line of his face, every subtle tension in his posture appeared with unnerving clarity. For a moment he thought the image hesitated, a fractional delay, no more than the pause between breaths. He blinked. The reflection blinked a heartbeat late, or perhaps he imagined it. A knock at the door broke the moment. "Enter," Virely said, without turning. Was his steward, Domenico, a man who rarely showed emotion, yet now looked uneasy. "Signor," he began, "there is something you should know. When the Bellini men arrived, they mentioned a visitor." "A visitor? A nobleman, someone who came to the workshop unexpectedly. He asked to see your mirror." Virely turned sharply. "Why?" "They didn't say, only that he seemed knowledgeable, curious. He commissioned a mirror of his own." Virely frowned. "Did they give his, signor?" "Only that he was of high standing." "And that he paid generously." Virely dismissed him, but the steward hesitated at the door. "Signor, the men said he asked whose mirror it was, and when they told him, he reacted as though he already knew you." Virely's pulse quickened. "Leave me," he said. The door closed. He turned back to the mirror. His reflection stood perfectly still, too still, as though waiting for him to speak.